Have you ever noticed how a glance can speak volumes more than words? That's precisely how it all began, with a single meaningful look. Then came an accidental touch, and suddenly, Ava realized she was engulfed by a wave of forbidden desire and betrayal, capable of radically altering not only her own life, but the destinies of those around her. Ava is 22 years old. She understands perfectly well why many people wonder, why is a girl her age living under the same roof as her uncle? This question had often surfaced in her own mind, but an answer remained elusive. She simply lives here, with Uncle Nathan and his wife Victoria. What began as a temporary refuge had evolved into something far more intricate and convoluted than she could have imagined. But before continuing, it's worth stepping back a little to explain how it all started. Ava had always been a creative soul. From an early age, she preferred drawing to playing with other children outdoors. She filled notebooks with sketches, crafting visual stories and immersing herself in worlds born of her imagination. This passion led her to choose graphic design as her future profession. Today, Ava dedicates most of her time to creative pursuits. Her world is filled with images, colors, and shapes. Yet behind these vibrant creations lay a mind filled with doubt, insecurity, and, most significantly, scarred by the past. Ava's life had never been easy. When she turned 12, her parents divorced. It was a profound shock for her. As a child, she believed in eternal love and the sanctity of family, but suddenly, everything crumbled. Her mother tried to rebuild her life, and so did her father. Ava found herself caught in the painful tug of war. She'll stay with me for the weekend. No, it's my turn this week. For years, she felt like unwanted baggage, with no one knowing what to do with her. The family moved several times, changing cities. Each new residence offered a fleeting hope for stability that never materialized. Then at 19, after starting college, Ava thought, finally, I'll find my place. But fate had other plans. Her mother got a job that required constant business trips. Her father already had a new family and was more interested in his new wife and young children than in his daughter from his first marriage. Ava felt alone, lost, and completely unsupported. It was then that moving in with Uncle Nathan became an unexpected solution. Nathan had always played an important role in Ava's life. In her father's absence, he taught her simple but valuable things: how to fix a bicycle, build a campfire, and be strong. He was more than just an uncle. He was a mentor and a safe haven. When her mother announced the move to Nathan's, Ava felt relieved. At least someone familiar and trustworthy would be nearby. But there was one detail Ava hadn't accounted for: Victoria. Victoria was Nathan's wife. They had married 2 years before Ava arrived. Ava didn't know her well. Their interactions were limited to brief encounters at family gatherings. Little was known about Victoria to Ava, but something about her stirred a vague unease. Perhaps it was the age difference. Victoria was a little older than Nathan, or perhaps it was the way she looked at Ava. It felt as if she were intruding into someone else's world. After moving in, Ava was given the guest room at the end of the hall. The room was beautiful and well-furnished, yet cold and impersonal. Ava felt like an outsider there. In the first few weeks, she tried to be inconspicuous, studying, working on design projects, and helping in the kitchen when possible. But the sense of detachment never left her. Victoria tried to be kind, offering advice on household chores and cooking, but attention lingered in the air. Nathan seemed genuinely happy about her arrival, while Victoria apparently struggled with some internal conflicts. But over time, things began to change. Gradually, Victoria became more open. They started talking about simple things. Victoria spoke about her work, travels, and life experiences. Ava saw a more complex person in her than she had previously imagined. Nevertheless, the feeling that she was an outsider never quite left her. And then something shifted. Ava started noticing things she hadn't before, small details that, in some way, turned her world upside down. These details concerned Nathan, his smile, accidental touches to her hand, a gaze that she thought changed when he believed she wasn't looking. For a while, Ava tried to convince herself that she was imagining things, that she was reading too much into ordinary occurrences. After all, she was his niece. But the longer she lived in that house, the harder it became to ignore what was happening. She felt her heart quicken whenever they were alone. She felt her face flush when their eyes met for too long. Ava knew it was wrong, that it was senseless. Yet, the connection between them was strong and undeniable, and she didn't know what to do about it. Then one quiet afternoon, the situation began to spiral. Ava was working on a college project in her room. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating her workspace. All was calm until she heard footsteps in the hallway. The steps were slow and hesitant. Ava knew Victoria wasn't home and Nathan was resting. The footsteps stopped near his bedroom door. Ava's heart quickened. Why would he be walking around the house at this hour? Yielding to curiosity or perhaps something she hadn't yet acknowledged, Ava stood up and walked into the hallway. Ava walked down the hallway. Nathan's bedroom door was slightly ajar, a sliver of light cutting through the dimness, creating an intricate play of shadows. Without a second thought, she gently pushed the door open. Nathan lay on the bed, hands clasped behind his head. His face, peaceful and serene, drew Ava's gaze like a magnet. But suddenly, an unfortunate incident occurred. Her elbow brushed against a vase by the door, and it crashed to the floor with a deafening clatter. Nathan instantly woke up. Their eyes met, and time seemed to stand still. Confusion flickered in Nathan's gaze, but there was something more. A silent acknowledgement, an unspoken understanding that Ava couldn't put into words. "Ava?" Nathan's hoarse, sleepy voice asked. "What are you doing here?" Ava's heart pounded. She didn't know what to say, how to explain her sudden presence. All she could stammer out was a hurried apology. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to wake you." Nathan propped himself up in bed and rubbed his eyes. His smile was as kind and welcoming as ever, but in the depths of his gaze, something new lurked. Something that made Ava's heart beat even faster. In that moment, she realized there was no turning back. A new reality dawned in her mind. What had once seemed like a simple misunderstanding now held a far deeper meaning. Ava could no longer ignore her feelings, and from Nathan's gaze, she understood he felt the same. In the days that followed, everything changed. It wasn't spoken aloud, but it was felt in every fleeting glance, in every accidental touch that lingered too long. It was a silent game, fraught with tension and questions neither dared to ask. Victoria, it seemed, noticed nothing. She continued with her routine, absorbed in her work and frequent trips. This only exacerbated the situation. Ava was torn by conflicting emotions, guilt and desire, that gnawed at her from within. She didn't want to hurt anyone, but denying what was happening was impossible. One afternoon, as Ava worked on a project in her room, Nathan appeared at the doorway. He looked flustered, as if he had something important to say but didn't know how to begin. "Ava, can I talk to you for a moment?" he asked softly. Ava's heart pounded. She knew this moment was inevitable but wasn't ready for it. Gathering her courage, she nodded, trying to appear composed. "Yes, of course. Come in." Nathan closed the door behind him and stood still, looking at Ava. A silent struggle was etched in his gaze. He began, but trailed off, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know how to say this, but I think we need to talk about what's happening between us." Ava felt her face flush. She had tried to avoid this conversation, but she knew there was no turning back. "Yes," she whispered. Nathan walked over and sat on a chair beside her, maintaining a slight distance, yet close enough for Ava to feel his presence. "Ava, you mean a lot to me. You always have." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "What we're feeling, it's complicated." Ava knew he was right. Everything was incredibly complicated, yet undeniably real. "I know, Nathan, but I can't stop thinking about it, about you." For a few moments, he looked at her in silence, and then something shifted in his gaze. A newfound resolve appeared, an acceptance of what they both had long known but feared to admit. "I can't stop thinking about you either, Ava." These words came as a liberation from a heavy burden. It was the truth, raw and sincere, and there was no turning back. The tension between them became palpable, open and undeniable. There were no longer secrets hidden in glances and accidental touches. Now they had to face it together. What lay ahead for them? How would they navigate feelings that defied all rules and expectations? Ava didn't know. Neither did Nathan. But one thing was clear: life would never be the same. Nathan's confession should have brought relief, clarity, but instead, it opened a door to a new world of doubt and conflict. Ma. Ava couldn't stop wondering how far this could go and how far she herself was willing to go. After that conversation, the situation escalated rapidly. Every encounter with Nathan felt charged with tension. It wasn't just about words and actions, but also about what remained unsaid, in the silence that spoke louder than words. One day, when Victoria was away on a business trip, silence settled over the house. Ava tried to focus on her project, but her thoughts wandered. Hearing footsteps behind her, she involuntarily flinched. "Ava, are you all right?" Nathan's voice was soft, but it carried a genuine concern that made Ava want to cry. She turned and looked at him. "I'm trying." Her voice sounded more vulnerable than she had expected. Nathan approached hesitantly, as if each step was an effort. He stopped beside her, hands in his pockets, and gazed intently at Ava. "You understand we're not alone in this, right? I feel the same way you do, but it doesn't make anything simpler." Ava nodded, unable to find words to express her feelings. How could she explain this whirlwind of emotions that felt impossible to control? "I just wish things were different. Simpler." Nathan sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "I want that too. But life is rarely simple, Ava. We both know that." They were silent for a while, contemplating what had been said. Then Nathan unexpectedly took another step toward Ava. "But that doesn't mean we should ignore our feelings. I don't want to lie to myself anymore." Then the unexpected happened. Nathan, overcoming his hesitation, leaned in and kissed Ava. It was a kiss unlike anything she had ever experienced, unhurried, yet filled with such a depth of feeling that it left her breathless. When their eyes met, Nathan's held a silent question. "Ava, is this truly what you want?" The answer was swift, yes. However, reality brutally pulled them back to earth. The sound of a door opening and footsteps echoing through the house announced Victoria's return. What awaited them as passion clashed with harsh reality? What secrets were poised to erupt, changing everything? They were about to find out. Victoria's footsteps, echoing in the hallway like a death knell, shattered the fragile silence between Ava and Nathan. The lingering sensation of the kiss, like an invisible mark, still felt fresh on Ava's lips, while Nathan froze by the door, waiting. At that moment, Victoria appeared, carrying her bag and coat, radiating a light smile as if oblivious to what had transpired in her absence. Yet a subtle glint in her eyes made Ava wary. "Hi, what are you two doing here?" her warm yet unsettling voice inquired. Ava, steeling herself, tried to maintain a composed expression. "Just working on a project." Nathan quickly corroborated her lie. "Yes, Ava was showing me her design ideas." Victoria's smile lingered on Nathan a moment longer than propriety demanded, an unspoken question in her gaze. "Great," she replied, taking off her coat. "I thought we could have dinner together tonight like a proper family." The word family echoed with bitter irony in Ava's ears. She forced a smile, trying to conceal the heaviness in her chest. "Of course, that's a wonderful idea." Victoria disappeared behind the kitchen door. Nathan, filled with confusion and guilt, turned to Ava, but an unyielding fire of desire still burned in his eyes. "Ava," he began. Ava cut him off, touching a finger to his lips. "Not now. Let's just get through dinner first." Dinner became a true test of endurance. Every word, every gesture, every glance became part of an intricate game, with Ava cast in an unwelcome role. Victoria seemed to exude calm, but Ava felt her intense scrutiny, as if she were trying to solve a complex puzzle. A subtle tension in her smile and gaze hinted at unspoken thoughts. Ava wondered if Victoria knew the truth, if she sensed the tension hanging in the air, or if she was simply waiting for the opportune moment to reveal it. After dinner, Victoria suggested they have coffee in the living room. Nathan, clearly uncomfortable, couldn't find a convincing reason to decline. Ava, trying to hide her agitation, sat on the sofa while Victoria poured the coffee. "So, Ava," she began, her voice quiet but laden with hidden meaning. Coffee in the living room became the epitome of tense silence. Every movement seemed calculated, every word spoken with a hidden agenda. Victoria, legs crossed, sat in the armchair with unruffled elegance, while Nathan, seated beside Ava on the sofa, looked as if he wished the floor would swallow him whole. Ava felt the tension in his shoulders and saw him clench his fists convulsively. "So, Ava," Victoria continued, her voice soft but full of insinuation, "how are your projects coming along?" "Nathan mentioned you're working on something interesting." Ava forced a smile, trying to maintain an appearance of calm. "Yes, I'm taking on freelance projects and building my portfolio." Victoria nodded slowly, her gaze never leaving Ava, making her uneasy, as if she knew the truth and was just waiting for the right moment to reveal it. Nathan cleared his throat, trying to lighten the mood. "Ava is very talented. I'm sure she has a brilliant future ahead of her." Victoria smiled, but her eyes remained cold. "Of course, with the right support, anything is possible, isn't it?" The words hung in the air like a veiled accusation. Ava's heart pounded, and Nathan looked away, clearly struggling with the urge to speak. Ava knew this couldn't go on much longer. The truth was on the verge of breaking free. After coffee, Victoria stood up and began collecting the cups. "Ava, would you mind helping me in the kitchen?" It wasn't a request, it was a challenge. Ava, complying, followed her into the kitchen. The silence between them was so thick it could be cut with a knife. Once in the kitchen, Victoria slowly closed the door and turned to Ava. "Do you think I don't know anything, Ava?" Her quiet voice was full of hidden menace. Ava froze. "I don't understand what you're talking about." Victoria let out a soft laugh, but there was no amusement in it. "Don't lie to me. I see the way you look at each other. I see how Nathan changes when he's around you. I can't ignore it." Ava's heart pounded. Victoria raised a hand, cutting her off. "I'm not here to judge you. I just want to understand when it started." Ava paused, trying to find the right words. "It was spontaneous between us. It just happened." Victoria sighed and ran a hand through her hair. "I felt something changing, but I didn't realize the extent of it." She moved closer to Ava and looked intently into her eyes. "Do you love him, Ava?" The question caught Ava off guard. She had never spoken those words aloud, but in that moment she knew the answer. "Yes, I do." Victoria closed her eyes for a moment, as if trying to process what she'd heard. Then with deep sadness in her voice, she said, "I didn't expect to hear that, but it explains a lot. Nathan always had a special fondness for you, but I never thought it would go this far." Silence fell again, heavy and full of unspoken words. Victoria seemed to choose her words carefully before speaking. "I don't want anyone to get hurt because of this, but it can't continue like this. Someone has to take responsibility for making a decision, and it looks like that will be me." Ava remained silent, understanding the full complexity of the situation. After a pause, Victoria added, "No one can truly win in this situation." Ava nodded slowly, recognizing the truth in her words. There was no room for a happy ending here. Nevertheless, she couldn't ignore her own feelings, which only grew stronger. Later that evening, after Victoria had retired to her room, Nathan waited for Ava in the living room. His nervousness was palpable, and his gaze was full of unspoken questions. "What did she say?" he whispered urgently. Ava took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. "She knows everything, and she said she wouldn't do anything." Nathan ran his hands over his face, feeling a wave of relief, yet the tension hadn't entirely left him. "Ava, this can't go on. We're playing with fire, and it's dangerous." Ava walked over to him and gently touched his hand. "I understand that, but we can't just turn off our feelings." Nathan pulled her into a tight embrace, as if to shield her from all harm. For a long time, they stood in silence, feeling only each other's presence. The following days were a roller coaster of emotions, full of ups and downs. Victoria kept her word and remained silent, but the atmosphere in the house was electric. Every word, every glance was laden with hidden meaning, but one day, everything changed. Ava received a message from Victoria suggesting they meet at a cafe in town. When Ava arrived, Victoria was already waiting, her expression serious. "We need to talk," she said as soon as Ava sat down, her tone portending nothing good. Ava nodded, bracing herself for the worst. "I've thought a lot about everything that's happened," Victoria began, her voice calm but resolute. "And I've come to the conclusion that despite my love for Nathan, I can't compete with what's between you two." She paused before adding, "I've decided to leave." Ava was stunned. "Victoria, I never wanted things to turn out like this." Victoria raised a hand, stopping her. "I know, but it happened, and now we need to move forward." She stood up and picked up her bag. "I hope you both find what you're looking for," she said finally, leaving Ava alone with her thoughts. When Ava shared the news of Victoria's departure with Nathan, he remained silent for a long time, lost in thought. Finally, he took a deep breath and said, "I never wanted to hurt anyone, but now that Victoria is gone, we have a chance to start over." The subsequent months became a period of adjustment. Victoria continued living her own life, while Ava and Nathan tried to build a future together. It wasn't easy, but gradually they managed to find a new balance. Looking back, Ava understood that everything that had happened was a lesson for them, an experience that helped them grow. Life isn't always easy, but sometimes it's necessary to follow your heart, even if it means facing difficulties.